History was made and it was pretty incredible. The Duke football team, for the first time ever, defeats Florida State. That was awesome. Let's talk about it.
You are Locked On Blue Devils, your daily podcast on the Duke Blue Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome into another episode of the Locked On Blue Devils podcast. My name is JJ Jackson. It is so amazing to have you here with us on the program today, Wednesday, October 23rd, 2024. Locked On Blue Devils is your one-stop shop where we discuss everything going on in the life of Duke athletics. Today, we're talking about Duke football, who this past weekend defeated Florida State for the first time ever. 22 times the Blue Devils had attempted to knock off LSU. 22 times they were unsuccessful. That changed this past week when a win over FSU gave the Blue Devils their sixth win of the season. They are bowl eligible for the third consecutive season, and we get to talk about all of that and so much more with our good pal Josh Cox from Duke Football Talks Section 17 podcast. If you have not done so already, please be sure to follow and subscribe to Locked On Blue Devils for free wherever it is that you get your podcasts. Leave us a 5-star rating and written review. Also, make sure that you take the time to check us out on YouTube each and every day. Like this video, share it with your friends, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Again, we are just so appreciative of the support that you give us here on the show today. Also, make sure that you follow us on X at LO_Blue Devils and follow me there as well at _JJ_Jackson_. So, without further ado, we got to bring him on into today's show. It's the aforementioned Josh Cox, who joins us on Locked On Blue Devils today. And you got to be there in person, man. Unbelievable. Duke got the job done. They knocked off Florida State.
I mean,
like, we're not dreaming. This is real.
Listen, yeah, I understand that Florida State only had one win on the season heading into the game. But, you know, for legacy Duke fans, for those of us that have been around the program for many, many years, you know, this win meant a whole lot. And so, you know, I think there was just that weight that was kind of lifted off the program a little bit. And then you add in the fact that, you know, that's where Coach Diaz, you know, that was his alma mater. And you add that into it. And, you know, it was just extra special for those guys to get that win, no matter what the records were for this season.
So many times before, we talked about the series a lot last week. Duke played Florida State, and every single time they lost, pretty much all of the times they were not competitive football games. Again, prior to this past week, Duke had only ever played one single possession game, a 7-point loss that they had back in 2017. Only 3 times ever had the game been played in 20 points or less, being the final margin on the scoreboard. I mean, it was dominant when you look at the overall series for Duke football. And in so many ways, Duke should have won the game on Friday night. But when it feels like a program, a team, a fan base is carrying that much, you don't feel like you can actually get the job done. It just feels like there are these football demons out there that don't allow Duke to knock off Florida State, and yet they did.
Well, certainly. I mean, I believe there were Duke fans that were feeling that pressure, you know, before the game, during the game. I'm sure the players felt, you know, that pressure a little bit of like, okay, we're supposed to get the monkey off our back, you know, this matchup. Duke was favored heading into kickoff. Like, this was supposed to happen. And sometimes when it's supposed to happen, you know, that's where like the majority of the pressure comes from. And so Duke it was very interesting, right? To be 0-22 historically against the program, and then to head into this game this past Friday night as the favorite. Like, that was a very odd place for Duke to be. And I thought the players, coaching staff responded, you know, very well to that, and came out and performed like they knew they could.
It's Friday night. It's under the lights. It's everything that you would want it to be for this Duke football team taking on Florida State. To your point, they're favored. They need to get this win. They're now bowl eligible following the win. But as we look at the game specifically with how it played out, I mean, it feels close and competitive all the way until the very end when Duke's able to keep Florida State from scoring there to close out the game. Right out of the gates, what was that atmosphere like when this game got started, Josh?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, you know, it was there were some rumors of a sellout. It was kind of not really sellout. There was some detail behind the scenes there of why that was, but it was not completely full, but I will say, it was 60-40 Duke fans in attendance, and it was loud. It got loud. Florida State fans, honestly, were incredible. I mean, the level of support that they showed for a team that has one win on the season so far, was pretty awesome, to be honest with you. I mean, you know, if I were a Florida State fan, and I didn't live in the Triangle, I'm not sure that I would travel, much for an away game at this point in the season. So kudos to them for showing up. But yeah, kudos to Duke. The atmosphere was great. And the crowd got loud when they needed to, and the crowd is starting to understand football better, trying to stay a little bit more quiet on the offensive side when Duke has the ball, and then getting loud when Duke's opponent has the ball. And then you have all the things that Duke has done, right, JJ? You've got the Devil's deck that was full, this past Friday night, and so that's another win, for Duke football and Duke athletics. And so, it was a great atmosphere. Friday night made it tough. I mean, a 7 p.m. kickoff on a Friday. There was a lot of late arriving folks. You have the late arrivers that don't get off work and can't get through the traffic in time.
Right.
And then you have the go home earlies who have smaller children. You know what I mean? They're trying to take care of those types of things. And so, it was a little bit of a interesting there, but all in all, good atmosphere, not on the level of the UNC game, not on the level of Notre Dame, Clemson last year, but close.
And Duke wins. They get the win at the end of the day. That's what matters. 23-16 at the final score. How do they do it? We'll talk about the big plays that made a difference in Friday night's win over Florida State after we take our first time out here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. Locked On Blue Devils here today is brought to you by our friends at LinkedIn. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just a job board. It helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or resources to hire. LinkedIn constantly finding ways to make the process easier. That's why 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, a proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. Sweet victory for the Duke Blue Devils, 23-16, the final score over Florida State. It's the 6th win of the year for Duke. Hard to put into words what this win means for the Blue Devils, given they had never knocked off Florida State before. But I think even more importantly, with a lot of football left to be played, it further validates that the Manny Diaz era is off to a great start, right? That we're still on course for sustaining a level of success inside that Duke football program.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if you rewind into July and you're like, Duke is bowl eligible, 7 games into the season, sitting at 6-1. I mean, it is a testimony to Manny Diaz, and obviously, ultimately, to the players that are going out there and making it happen on the field. But I mean, the culture is in place. David Feely is doing his thing. Duke, every single week, Duke is able to match up. Certainly, that roster at Florida State was full of 5 stars and 4 stars. But if you watched the game and if you happen to be in attendance, you did not see the big, huge drop off in athleticism, speed, or talent. And that's important because historically, when Duke would go into a matchup with Florida State, you mentioned games not even being close. And it was because there was such a disparity between, how good Florida State and talented they were and what Duke was able to put on the field. And so kudos to Coach Diaz / Feely and the staff, and then obviously to the players themselves for, being prepared and really taking this program, up a couple of notches on the ladder and beating Florida State.
So how did this team get the win on Saturday, Josh?
Yeah.
When you look back, a lot of people want to point to that Chandler Rivers pick six. What an exciting play that was to kind of set the tone early. I mean, if you're watching this game and you kind of look back at the numbers at halftime, it's a 17-6 lead for the Blue Devils halfway through this one, but Duke only had 62 yards of offense at halftime. And people were like, how is Duke winning this game given that? It's kind of those big plays on defense like Chandler Rivers pick six that was able to get it done on a slower night for the Duke offense.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, Duke did not win most of the numerical battles, right? Like, if you look at first downs, if you look at, yardage, if you look at all those types of things, I mean, Duke did not win those. And typically those are the things that you have to win, in order to be successful and win football games. And so, Duke did not win those and still won the game. And, that is a testament. You mentioned Chandler Rivers, second season in a row playing Florida State with a pick six. I thought that was really interesting. He did the same thing down in Tallahassee last season. But when that happened, JJ, it was 3-0 Florida State, and they were driving, approaching midfield when that happened. And that was a turning point. I know it was early in the game, but that was a turning point. And I believe from that moment forward, I believe everybody in the stands, everybody on the sidelines, everybody in uniform, really believed like, hey, like we can be the better team here tonight and we can get that win. And then, the defense really, I mean, it was a little bit of a bend don't break with the running game, rushing defense. Gave up a little bit of yardage on the ground, which is not uncommon necessarily for this defense, but just can't get scored on, man. It's tough for people to score on them. And, kudos to Jonathan Packey, Manny Diaz, and then, these guys, these tackles for losses, right? The disruptive plays that are being made by this defense. I mean, what more can you say, really?
Yeah, big time performance for the Duke defense. Big win. Again, now 6-1 on the season. Florida State, they had the quarterback questions going into the game, as we talked about with DJU. Not living up to the hype so far this season for them. He doesn't even play in the football game, and yet they still play multiple quarterbacks with both Brock Glenn and Luke Kremenhoek having pass attempts for FSU. The run game, like you said, did get a little bit more active than I think Duke would have liked to see, considering how stout they've been against the run. But I think a lot of people walked away from this game talking about, you know what? Duke is one of the best defenses in the entire ACC. We should probably start saying those things, and that's exactly what they did.
I mean, listen, while the running game was decent for Florida State, there were still 45 yards of negative rushing plays. That includes sacks and tackles for loss. And so that's a lot, right? I mean, Duke was disruptive. By the way, the two Florida State quarterbacks combined for a less than 50% completion percentage, right?
We'll take it.
No touchdown passes. And so, once again, I don't know. Duke has been fortunate. Post-Cutcliffe era, they've had two head coaches that have been 100% defensive geniuses. I mean, really, when you look at it, I mean, that's exactly what it is. Both Coach Diaz and Coach Elko have just been incredible defensive minds.
Without a doubt. Big win for this Duke football team. Really excited to see what they can do in the weeks to come. We'll take our next break here on. And then when we come back, we've got more with our good pal Josh Cox from Duke Football Talks Section 17 podcast. We're back in just a moment. Locked On Blue Devils here today is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. That's right. FanDuel is the absolute best. NFL fans, you could start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. So when you get in the hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. The NBA is off and running as well. Josh Cox and I, big fans of the NBA, and got to see it return to action last night with the start of the 2024-2025 season, and so much action that you could see over on FanDuel. You'll get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That is FanDuel.com. FanDuel is a proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. back on the program. Josh Cox is here with us from Duke Football Talks Section 17 podcast. I got to hear about the show, man. Give folks a little overview of what you got going on.
Well, first of all, I've moved all around my back sunroom to try to get out of the sun, and it keeps following me.
Keeps following
so I apologize. Apologize for that. But no, yeah. So we do weekly podcasts focusing in on Duke football. You can find us Section 17 podcast wherever you consume podcasts, including YouTube. YouTube families are growing and becoming just a larger portion of kind of our fan base and listenership, and so. We encourage you to do that. And we have a lot of fun. We do ticket giveaways every week. And so especially if you're local and a Duke fan and can get out to a game, we give away 4 tickets every week and just have some fun. We try to create a little bit of a Duke football community, and we hope that that's beneficial for people. And so check us out. Leave us a rating and review as you do here on Locked On, and we'd appreciate it.
Yeah, I really encourage people to check that out. Really good stuff there with the Section 17 podcast. So now that Duke's got the win, they've got another home game coming up this weekend, Saturday night, from Friday night to Saturday night, where they will host SMU, the Mustangs, first season in the ACC, coming to take on a Duke football team. Before the game specifically, after a win like last week, Duke now receiving votes in the AP poll, top 25. If you were to extend it out a little bit, Duke got 2 votes. They came in there at 29. So just on the outside looking in, Duke football has not been ranked in the top 25 since 1994, something even David Cutcliffe wasn't able to do. It's been 30 years since Duke was able to do that. It's pretty crazy to think about the start to the year we've had so far this year with Duke, Josh, when you hear more and more things like that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we're really in 1994 territory. That team, I believe, started 7-1, but I think wound up 7-4 or something like that. I mean, at the end of the season was not the greatest. But yeah, you're in a little bit of rare territory for Duke football. But I think we all knew this, JJ, starting at the Georgia Tech game. Well, really, at preseason, we thought it was the UNC game. But really starting at that Georgia Tech game, it was like, okay, here comes the meat of the ACC. You had Georgia Tech, Florida State, SMU, Miami, NC State, Virginia. You know what I mean? You've got those teams coming up for Duke in the schedule. And so, Duke is about to really see, right? About to see, is this for real? Are we a 7-win team or are we a 9-win team, right? There's a big difference there. And I'll be interested. I'm as interested as anyone else, right, to see, where this team winds up. But for sure, this Saturday night with SMU coming to town, SMU has wins, over Louisville. They dominated their matchup against Florida State. They played. Let's see who else has been on their schedule. I think they're non-conference. They had a good non-conference. I forget who their non-conference game was against, but they've had some good. TCU, I believe, was on their non-conference. So yeah, I mean they played some good football, and got a lot of respect for Rhett Lashley and what they're doing down there.
No doubt. Really excited to see this game play out on Saturday. We talked about the top 25, and SMU is in that top 25. They're number 22. Duke, talking about our friends at FanDuel, has opened as an 11.5-point home underdog. So one of the toughest offenses that the Blue Devils are going to go up against. We've praised their defense a whole lot, and rightfully so. It's one of the better units in the ACC. I think my concern, or the one thing to kind of figure out going into this game, Josh, though, is SMU's got this great offense. Can the Duke offense kind of click back into gear and be able to keep up if it does turn into a higher scoring football game?
Yeah, and then unfortunately, this is not typical of SMU, but their defense is pretty stout, especially their running defense. Now their pass defense is not great, but their rushing defense is, I think, 7th in the country or something like that. And so, in order for Duke to score against this team, according to the numbers, they're going to need to do so through the air. And, quite frankly, something's going to have to change, right, on the Duke side. I mean, Duke's not moving the football. They're not connecting. The quarterback and wide receivers and tight ends are not on the same page. And so, Duke's going to have to figure it out. They're going to have to figure out how to score points, and whether it's special teams, defense, or their offense, waking up and finding its rhythm. Duke's going to have to score points Saturday night to beat SMU. This is not going to be a 10-7 football game.
How do you get Malik Murphy and the offense back in check? I think a lot of people have been impressed with what Start Thomas has been able to do out of the backfield, but I think it's been heavier box looks that Duke has had because they've been running the ball so well, and teams now saying, all right, we're going to go all out, making sure we can stop this run. Now the offense has to be able to make plays through the air to kind of even that out.
Certainly, and I think there's a little bit of, I'm hoping that Duke can get back to that preseason mode of like, we want to be fast, we want to go up tempo, we really want to throw the ball around the field, we want to do high percentage completions, yards after catch type of offense, and I would really love to see Duke get back to that of trying to move the ball quickly. I do think in spurts, we have seen this offense be successful in that no huddle, quick movement, and I'd like to see us get back to that. If I had the true answer, Coach Diaz would be paying me the big bucks, and I don't, and it's a complicated, answer really, JJ, too. Like, even if we had it, it's complicated. I mean, you have a first-year offensive coordinator, you have a first-year offensive system, you have a first-year starting quarterback in a new system with a new coordinator, and then you've got all the unique, ability players around him. And so there's a lot going on here. There's a lot of moving parts. And right now, those moving parts are not moving in synergy. And so the challenge ahead of Duke for this coming Saturday is, what can they get in sync, right? What parts of the offense can they get in sync and then exploit those in the game Saturday night?
Who deserves a shout out for this Duke football team with how they've been playing as of late? You're really good at bringing these guys up. And I mentioned the big play Chandler Rivers had with the pick six. Star Thomas has been great as of late. Quayshawn Brown making more plays in the pass game for the Duke team. Who deserves some love today, Josh?
How about old crazy train, Ozzie Nicholas, man? Ozzie Nicholas came in through the transfer portal, a linebacker. And to be honest with you, before Nick Morris goes down with an injury, he was kind of in that second rotation of linebackers. And not only is he playing a lot, he is playing well. And he had the other interception this past Friday night, almost returned it for a touchdown. And he's just playing really good football. He's tackling well and has become a leader on that defense. And so he, alongside of Alex Howard, as far as transfers go, in that linebacker room have really been key. And then, I think this week was an interesting week because you saw Kendi Charles, get in the backfield and have a tackle for loss. You saw Christian Rory, I believe, force a fumble. And Kendi is starting and playing a lot, but Christian Rory is not necessarily. And you're seeing the depth a little bit come into play in a good way for this defense. So those are the guys I would mention.
Well deserved. All right, Duke and SMU Saturday night, Wallace Wade Stadium. Going to be a movie. Going to be a whole lot of fun to see how this one plays out. And then, Josh, we also got a fun Sunday night with the Brotherhood Run there at Cameron Indoor. Bobby Hurley makes his return as the head coach for Arizona State. Really fun 51-point victory for Duke last weekend on the basketball court. You excited for Sunday too?
Oh yeah, it's going to be interesting, man. I love the fact that Bobby Hurley's back in Cameron for the first time. I love that this game is for charity and Duke Children's. Like, I think that's really, really neat. And then it's going to be a competitive, challenging basketball game. I was able to be there for the exhibition game this past Saturday, and obviously Duke far outmatched the opponent. But I'm telling you what, man, there's a lot of positive energy around, the Con Cooper, come on, it's
a good group.
It's got potential to be special, man. Special.
Yeah, I'm fired up, man. We'll get to have you on here soon to talk more about basketball, but always good to hear the football insight and so much more. One more time, Josh, before you head out of here, tell us about your show.
Yeah, well, now the NBA season's back too, JJ. You mentioned it in the break. We got more that we can text about for sure.
No kidding.
But a great time of year, World Series, NBA starting up, college basketball starting up, college football, NFL, all in motion. If you're a hockey fan, there's a little bit of that going on as well. So if you're a sports fan, this is your season. But yeah, you can reach us and find our work at Duke FB Talk on X, on Instagram. We have a Facebook group, Duke Football Talk. Just search in the search bar there, and we have just a great community. And so reach out to us. My personal Twitter's there at Joshua Cox. Would love to follow and connect with you. But yeah, just really enjoy doing what we do, talking Duke football, and then talking a little of everything on this podcast for sure.
Awesome. We'll do this again next week, Josh. Good to see you, man.
JJ, have a great one, man.
All right, that's Josh Cox joining us here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils, and that's going to do it for our show here today. Big win for Duke football this past weekend. Hopefully they can get another one coming up soon. Subscribe to the Locked On Blue Devils podcast wherever you get it, and subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. As always, go Duke. I'll talk to you tomorrow. My name is JJ Jackson. Thank you and good day.